Love, Fame, and Betrayal, Sharon's untold story. Before the fame, there was just Ben and Sharon, two young dreamers, trying to carve out a life in Lagos. They lived in a modest apartment in Yoba, one of the busy but relatively affordable areas in the city. Sharon worked as a school teacher, while Ben hustled as a part-time musician, performing at small clubs and restaurants around Lagos. Though their life wasn't glamorous, there was a quiet joy in the simplicity of their days. They had each other, and that was all that mattered. Ben had always dreamed of making it big in the music industry, but back then, the dream felt far away. His friends, his family, everyone around him told him that music was just a hobby, not a career. But Sharon was different. She believed in him when no one else did. She'd spend hours with him, listening to his songs, offering feedback, and encouraging him to keep going. Every time Ben doubted himself, Sharon was there to remind him of his potential. Evenings in their apartment were simple yet precious. Sharon would cook dinner in their tiny kitchen, usually jollof rice or fried plantains, while Ben would sit on their couch, strumming his guitar, practicing his lyrics. He'd sing for her, and she'd smile, her eyes filled with love and hope. It was their routine, their little world. They didn't have much, but Sharon was content. She had the man she loved by her side, and that was enough. It wasn't easy, though. Lagos was a tough city, and Ben struggled to make ends meet. He played at local bars in Suralere, a vibrant part of Lagos known for its nightlife, and occasionally performed at events in Ikeja, the city's bustling commercial center. But the gigs were few and far between. Money was tight, and there were days when Sharon would have to skip meals just to make sure Ben had enough to get by. They didn't have the luxuries others might take for granted, but they had each other, and that made everything bearable. Then came the turning point. One night, after a performance at a small club in Victoria Island, a posh area known for its upscale crowd, Ben was approached by a man who said he was a scout for a record label. Ben didn't believe him at first. It seemed too good to be true. But the man insisted, handing Ben his card and telling him that he had something special. The scout told him he had been watching Ben's performances for weeks and believed he had the potential to be a star. The next few days felt like a blur. Ben was in shock. Sharon, however, kept her faith. She reminded him of the long nights they spent dreaming about this moment, and how far they had come. The record label called him in for an audition, and after what felt like an eternity of waiting, they signed him. It wasn't a big deal at first, a small contract for a debut album with a local label, but it was a start. Ben was thrilled. It felt like the doors to his dreams had finally opened. Sharon stood by him through every step of the process. They moved out of their small apartment in Yoba to a slightly larger place in Lekki, a more upscale area. They didn't have much, but it was a sign of progress, a step forward. The days when Ben would perform for peanuts at small clubs felt like a distant memory. At first, nothing really changed. The success was gradual. Ben still worked hard in the studio, and Sharon still stood by him, helping him with his music, managing his schedule, and keeping him grounded. They celebrated each small victory together. She was always by his side, whether it was a local radio interview in Ikeja or a small performance at a restaurant in Victoria Island. Their bond was strong, and Sharon couldn't have been prouder. The man she had always believed in was finally getting his shot. Ben's career started to take off slowly but steadily. He became a regular face in Lagos's music scene, performing at major venues like Terra Culture and The Shrine, where the energy of the crowd fueled his passion even more. His music videos began to air on local TV stations like Channels TV and MTV Base Africa. Slowly, the fame started to creep in. But even then, Sharon didn't let it change them. Ben was still the man she knew, still the man she loved. But as the bookings grew, so did the demands. Ben was being asked to perform at bigger events, including concerts in other African countries. He was flown to Johannesburg, South Africa, for his first international performance, and then to Accra, Ghana, for a major collaboration with a popular musician. Sharon went with him at first, a silent partner in every adventure, but as the offers poured in, she began to feel the weight of his rising star. With every new trip, the distance between them began to grow. At first, it wasn't anything major. Sharon understood the grind of the industry. She would wait for his return, and when he came back, they'd pick up where they left off. But gradually, Ben's fame started to change him. He was always on the move, always traveling. Then came the whispers. Rumors began to surface about Ben's supposed involvement with other women. Sharon heard them, of course. They started as little whispers on social media, and then they found their way into the tabloids. Sharon didn't want to believe it. She couldn't. Ben had always been her rock, the man who promised her that no matter how big he got, he'd never forget where he came from. But as the days passed and the rumors kept swirling, Sharon couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Ben came home late one evening from a tour in Nairobi, Kenya, where he had been performing in a sold-out concert. Sharon was sitting on the couch, waiting for him, the kids asleep in the other room. She had seen the gossip on Twitter, the headlines in the newspapers. She didn't want to confront him, but the silence between them was unbearable. "Ben, we need to talk," Sharon said as he walked through the door. Ben sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Not now, Sharon. I'm tired. I just got back." But Sharon wouldn't let it go. "No, Ben. We need to talk about everything. The rumors, the trips, the distance. I need to know if I still matter to you." He paused, his face hardening. Sharon could see the change in him, the coolness that had crept into his eyes. The man she once knew was slipping away. He didn't say anything. Instead, he walked past her, disappearing into their bedroom. Sharon stood there, her heart heavy. She had loved him through everything, the struggles, the triumphs, the highs and lows. But now, she wasn't sure who this man was anymore. The days following Ben's return from Nairobi felt like they stretched on forever for Sharon. Every time he walked through the door, he seemed more distant, more consumed by the fame that was now a permanent part of his life. Sharon could feel it in the way he spoke, the way he no longer made an effort to check in on her, or even engage in the small talks that once brought them closer. He was busy, yes. But it wasn't just about the work. Sharon knew, deep down, that something was changing within him, something she couldn't ignore. He started getting more invitations to perform abroad. His social media was flooded with new fans, many of them singing his praises, and a few, mostly women, making their affection for him known. The comments were innocent at first, but as the weeks went by, they became more flirtatious. Ben didn't seem to mind. He would reply to some of them with casual emojis or quick jokes, as if it was all part of the game. Sharon hated that game. She had always admired how Ben managed to stay humble, how he never let the fame get to his head. But now, she wasn't so sure. He was still the same man, but there was an edge to him, a disconnect. He would spend long hours in the studio, late nights making music, but Sharon would often lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if those nights were really just about the music. Or were there other things filling up his time? It all came to a head when Ben went to London for a performance. Sharon didn't go with him this time. She stayed behind, taking care of the kids and managing their home. Ben promised her it would be just a short trip, but the night before he was scheduled to return, Sharon got a call from a friend, an old acquaintance who had been following the gossip about Ben's relationships. "Sharon, you need to be careful," the voice on the other end of the line said. "I heard about a party Ben was at in London. There were rumors about him being with someone else, someone very close to his team. Sharon's heart sank. She felt the familiar sting of betrayal, but she tried to push it away. This couldn't be true. Ben loved her. He loved their family. They had been through too much together for him to throw it all away. The next morning, Ben returned. His face lit up when he saw Sharon at the door, but something in his eyes was different. He kissed her quickly, almost hurriedly, before dropping his bags and heading straight for the couch. Sharon stood there, the weight of the phone call still heavy in her mind. "Ben, I heard something," she started, her voice trembling. She couldn't hold it back anymore. "There are rumors about you and someone in London." Ben stiffened, his smile fading. "Sharon, I don't know where you're getting all this. It's just gossip. You can't listen to that nonsense." But Sharon wasn't convinced. She crossed her arms, refusing to back down. "I know what I heard, Ben. You're changing. I don't know who you are anymore." Ben let out a sigh and stood up, running his fingers through his hair. "Sharon, you don't get it. I'm busy. I'm trying to build something for us. For this family." Sharon looked at him, the man she had loved with all her heart, and for a brief moment, she wondered if he even saw her anymore. "But at what cost, Ben? We are not a part of your life anymore. The kids barely see you. We hardly talk anymore. It's always about the music, about the fame." Ben opened his mouth to speak but stopped himself. He knew she was right. She had been patient. She had supported him when he had nothing. But now, it seemed like all that was slipping through his fingers, like he was reaching for something bigger, something that didn't include her. The next few weeks were a blur of heated conversations and awkward silences. Ben traveled constantly, and Sharon stayed behind with the kids, doing her best to hold their lives together. She kept the house running, put the kids to bed, and did everything she could to make sure life appeared normal. But deep down, Sharon felt as if she were holding onto the edges of a life that was slipping away. And then the cheating rumors started to get louder. At first, it was just whispers on social media, but soon, the tabloids began running stories. Ben had been seen with a young woman in Paris, someone who was rumored to be more than just a fan. Sharon tried to ignore it, but it was hard when the evidence was everywhere. She'd scroll through Instagram, and there he was, looking happy, laughing with another woman. And every time Sharon confronted him, Ben would get defensive, brushing it off as nothing. "It's all part of the job, Sharon. You have to trust me," he would say, but the words no longer held the same weight. One evening, after a particularly long tour in Dubai, Ben returned home late. Sharon had prepared his favorite dish, but when he walked in, he didn't even acknowledge it. He barely spoke to her before retreating to their bedroom. Sharon's heart cracked a little more with each passing day. She knew she couldn't keep living like this. But she loved Ben. She loved him with every piece of her heart. But love, she realized, was not enough anymore. Watch out for part 2. If you find this video interesting, don't forget to like,